Hey guys, today Blue and I are going to give you a walkthrough of my 10 by 12 foot greenhouse. The first thing you'll notice is that I poured concrete for the footprint of the greenhouse, and that's to keep it off the ground when the ground's wet and soggy, and it makes an easy, cleanable surface. The next thing you'll notice is I covered the transparent plexiglass panels with a whitewash to keep out excess sunlight and heat. The whitewash is simply made out of diluted white latex paint, and you can see that it'll actually rub off if you want to remove it. There's 2 vents on each side of the roof of the greenhouse that can be opened from the inside. I put in concrete steps because there's this little bump up over the bottom, and you want to make sure you're not tripping over it every time you open the door. All right, let's have a peek inside. It's January in South Carolina, and I'm most proud of the tomatoes that I'm getting, as well as rosemary and other herbs. And I've got some kale growing in here and a bunch of basil plants. These are in flower. But instead of talking about the plants, let's talk about the setup. Of course, you gotta have water, and until I get a dedicated water line coming in from my plumbing system, right now I'm just filling this tub with the hose and then using a watering can to water the plants. The next thing you're going to need is electricity for the cooling. In this case, I've got an attic fan installed on a wall. And for heating, I've got an electric space heater down here attached to this thermostat. This thermostat is available online, and it's got a waterproof housing just for greenhouses, and you dial in what temperature you want the heat to come on. The attic fan comes with an adjustable thermostat, so it'll kick on at a designated temperature. I've got mine set around 90 degrees, so that'll automatically cut on when it gets too warm in here. My main electric actually runs inside this conduit, and it comes from underneath the ground. I've buried a dedicated line to the circuit box inside the house. And make sure that if you have a receptacle, that it's in a waterproof outdoor box that can cover that up, keep it from any condensation drips from the roof. To open the vent, I installed a little screw on this tab, and it allows me to push up with a bar and lock it in the open position. The other thing I do is put a remote thermometer, and the transmitter transmits to this receiver, which is placed in the house, so I can look at the temperature and humidity inside the greenhouse. As far as soil and fertilizer goes, I just use regular potting mix, and it's got some fertilizer added to it. And then I use liquid fertilizer, the Miracle-Gro, for example, mixed with water, especially once the tomatoes set fruit. I built these benches with lots of flow-through for the water, and it's built out of pressure-treated 2x4 lumber. And if you look at how I made the spacing, I simply turned a 2x4 on side, and that's the width of the spacing between the main frame 2x4s. When I water the plants up here, the water drips out of the pots into the gravel and evaporates back up, keeping the humidity levels nice and high. And then in the back, I've got a raised bar so that I can tie tomato plants to it as they grow tall. Underneath the counters, I can also have additional plants like these chives and the spearmint. The tomato plants have a tendency to twist and twirl and vine and sprawl, so next year what I'm going to do is put them all in cages that I make out of hog wire, so that as they grow, they don't flop over like this one is. Man, it's hot in there. I was totally sweating. It's 90 degrees in there. It's in the 60s out here. So actually on days like today that are nice and sunny, I put a screen here to keep the deer and the dog and the critters out. And then I just open those doors and let that nice cool air come in and buffer that hot air. If you're thinking about building a greenhouse, even if the kit's inexpensive, like about $600, keep in mind this whole thing is going to cost you over $1,000, and it's a lot of work and a lot of time. But the payoff is to have tons of tomatoes all season long. Now I gotta pick those up.